Okay, here we go. Today we have Anthony Salvatore Luciano Raimondi, a.k.a. Anthony Shades, a.k.a. Anthony Cigars, a.k.a. the Leg Breaker, who was once the enforcer for the Colombo crime family.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us at Vlad TV today.
Pleasure.
Well, this is our first time sitting down, so I want to get into the whole story.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Brooklyn.
Right.
Okay, but before actually growing up in Brooklyn, your family came from Sicily.
Yes.
Okay, and what made them move from Sicily to New York?
Both of my grandfathers, they had cousins that were already over here. And from the story that I got, naturally, was that they were making money over here that you couldn't make over there in Sicily. So both grandfathers took their families and says, we're going to America. And they came to America and they made a lot of money over here. They made more money over here than they would have made in Italy at that time.
Well, from what you said in your book, both your grandfathers were part of the Black Hand.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, me and probably a lot of other people got to know the Black Hand from the movie Godfather 2.
Black Hand.
Have you ever seen the movie?
Yeah, the Black Hand was in Godfather 2. Yeah, I don't remember that.
Well, yeah. In the Godfather 2, you see a young Vito Corleone.
Right.
Right. And as he was coming up in New York,
mm-hmm.
there was a guy named Don Fanucci who
mm-hmm.
was the head of the Black Hand in Hell's Kitchen.
Right,
and he was basically shaking
right.
down all
that.
the local
Yes.
Italian businesses.
Yes, I forgot that. Yes, you're right. 100% right.
Right. And actually, Don Fanucci became the victim of Vito Corleone's first assassination.
Yeah.
So that's where I was familiar with the Black Hand. But I actually looked into it. And the Black Hand was quite an organization. Well, this was kind of like the Mafia before the Mafia.
Well, these are the guys, Black Hand still exists to this day. If you go back to the old country, these are the guys you don't mess with. In other words, when I say you don't mess with these guys, you mess with them, they'll kill you with no two ways about it. If they can't get you, they'll kill your family. End of story. There's no questions asked, no nothing. They don't care from the oldest to the youngest. They'll just take you right out. They just don't care. These are the guys you do not mess with. Even the Italian Mafia, as you would call it, or American Mafia, they don't mess with the guys from the Black Hand.
Right, because the Black Hand, from what I understand, in the early, late 1800s, early 1900s,
right,
they basically extorted 90% of the Italians that were working and living in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say extorted, kidnapping, murder, arson, and dynamite was regular in what the Black Hand was doing. In fact, the police actually called the Italian neighborhood in New York the bomb zone because so many bombs were going off from the Black Hand extorting businesses.
I wasn't born back then, but I know from what my grandfathers told me what they used to do. Like one of my grandfathers worked in a coal yard, supposedly. My grandfather, Frank, my mother's father. And I used to see him in the morning when we lived on Baltic Street because he had an 8-family building and there was nothing but family in there. So he would get up. He goes, I'm going to work. He used to go he works in the coal yard. And he'd come back from the coal yard looking the same way he did when he left. And he's in the coal yard. He's supposed to get dirty, this guy. Then I see guys used to come to the house one time and we were in the backyard. And a bunch of guys came and they were handing him envelopes. And I'm looking at them. And I told my father, my father says, let it go. He said, don't worry about it because you'll find out. And as I got older, I found out everybody was paying my grandfather. They were giving him the envelopes. The coal yard was his basis of operation out of there. He would meet people, have meetings over there, and then he would conduct his business there. And then when he went back to the house on Baltic Street, because we had 575 Baltic Street was the house. And then they would bring him the envelopes. Everybody would bring him the envelopes every week. There was there was a trucking company on the block called Brookhaven. The guy who was there, I remember I was about 10. And I remember my grandfather getting into an argument with the guy. His grandfather told me, he says, don't worry about it. It's okay. No problem. During that night, the whole place went on fire. Then again, the insurance paid, and then the guy started coming up with an envelope. We had chock full of nuts. Was the coffee company. They opened up a factory on the block where they would roast the coffee. Every day, my uncles and my grandfather, they would get like 200-300 pound bags. They would give them, plus they would get an envelope. My grandfather had a good racket going.
Well, I guess the Black Hand, when it came to threatening people, they would leave like a piece of paper on someone's door, and they would basically, you mentioned coal. They would basically like cover their hand in coal and leave like their handprint on the paper to let people know the Black Hand has some sort of issue with them, and then that basically scared everyone enough to do whatever they said.
Well, see, my grandfather, Frank Casa, that's my mother's father, his real last name is Costello. Him and Frank Costello were cousins. The reason why he changed the name, because he had cousins named Casa in the old country. Every time they came looking for Frank Costello, they grabbed my grandfather. My grandfather was only 5'6". Uncle Frank was like 6'2", 6'3". How are you grabbing this guy? This guy's small, this guy's big, but they were looking for Frank Costello. So he adopted the name Casa after our cousins in Italy. But still, they still kept coming and bothering my grandfather anyway. They always bothered him. But he was some piece of work, my grandfather. He really was.
Okay, so here you are growing up in this family where everyone is essentially mob related. And I guess your uncle is Lucky Luciano?
All right, Lucky was my grandmother's half-brother. My great-grandfather, Anthony, because Lucky's father was Anthony. His real name was Anthony. That's who I got the name from. I got it from him. He had an affair with a woman. And out of the woman came my grandmother, Nancy, Auntie Mary, Auntie Lucy, and Auntie Cumberlina. Now, my grandfather, Tony Luciano, Raimondi, they called him Tony the Barber. He was a cousin to Lucky through blood. Now, he turned around when Lucky's sister, which was my grandmother Nancy, my grandfather snatched her off the streets in Italy and married her. So now him and Lucky, not only they're cousins, now they're brother-in-laws. And that's how it went down, and that's how it went down the line. But that was my father's father. He had a barbershop on Columbia Street in Brooklyn. And my grandmother and grandfather, they owned the building. It had 2 apartments above it, and there was Trophy's Bakery on the bottom, which was a very famous bakery back then. And my grandfather had the barbershop across the street. They called him Tony the Barber because he knew how to cut hair. But I remember when I was growing up, and I was always going down there, I saw very few people going there for a haircut. I mean, once or twice people walked in there and you never saw them again. And he was small too. My grandfather, he's pictures in my book. That's the one with the tall woman with the frizzy hair. My grandmother, he was only about 5'5". That's all he was. But my both grandfathers were small, but they were deadly. They were deadly. Unbelievable, these 2 guys were. But yet, you never heard them yell. I never heard them yell. They would get them. Okay, they never get mad. They argue you. Okay, don't worry about whatever you say, and they walk away. And then guarantee something was going to happen after that. They never yelled. I never seen them threaten anybody. Nothing.